Okay, so there we go, we're all done. What we've actually done here, you might be able to see here, we've done a little bit of rescribing work, just tidied up a few of these little joins because they're a little bit filled up. But basically, all we've done, we've put some little bit of wadding into the actual intakes and to the exhaust, just to sort of stop the overspray going up there. And any nasties, because obviously we've pre-painted them with silver. Okay, so what we're going to do, we need to blacken out obviously the cockpit area. Now this rear part is actually blue from the inside looking out, obviously from the metal effect we're going to try and keep, but the front area looks pretty dark to me in the reference photos. Although you look at some, they're green, some show it as being aluminium, some are black, so you know, it's easy way. Now because of, obviously we're not using much paint, I'm just going to take the colour cup off a second. Okay, and we're just going to grab a brush, we'll just tip it. We're just tipping a little bit of neat paint just straight into the top of the colour cup, just like that. So it's in here, just like this. Okay. Now all we're going to do is just spray the front part of the cockpit. Okay. So the flow is coming through all okay. We're just going to remove this part just for the minute. Okay, I'm just going to put my hand here just to deflect any spray that could possibly go elsewhere. Okay. So all we do is start down by the nose. Overspraying in the black, just like that. As you can see, you get a nice print on the old finger to show we're running okay. Okay, just coming back to do this side, same way. So now that will look black from the inside looking out. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're just going to pop it down, coming in from the underside a little bit. Okay. There we go. It doesn't matter if we get a tiny bit of overspray in there. Then what we can do, we can pop the canopy back on, just like that. Then what we're going to do, we're just going to blow this through, get rid of this down here. Okay, then we've got the internal colour that we use throughout, which is H417. So just double check, yeah. Okay, which is our light blue colour. Same thing, just a drop into it. Now we've got the black in here still, but what we want is a dark version of it anyway. Okay, so we just blow this through. Out it comes. Okay, now it's a dark, grimy colour to this. Okay, then all we're going to do is go right over the top. Okay, and we're just going to come around and just spray all the areas. Okay, what we're going to do is just going to spray this entire front half with the paint because we just happen to have it here and just use it up, okay? So we're cutting to air because this is going to have two coats because we want it to be nice and thick, and because it's quite a grey as a thin colour, we just need to get it all in there. Okay, so we're just cutting to air, drying down, blowing it right the way over the entire cockpit. Second bit of paint going in. Okay, probably a little bit too much for what we need. Okay, right the way over the top again. Okay, and we just spray down these sides and use it up. Okay, and what we're going to do, because we've got a little bit left over, we're just going to bring it back over these two replacement lines that we did, just to spray them in. There we go, we've run out now. So what we do, we'll let that dry just a moment, and then we can prime up the entire thing. So we just dry this back. So as I said, we'll get that out of the way just a sec over there. Get the airbrush all cleaned up. When we're all nice and clean, then we can get on, get some primer on it, and we can get on with the painting. Okay, so this has been dry now for a little bit. We can see you've got nice edges back on here on the closer cam, you see. Nicely blended in. Panel lines look good with paint on, which is the main thing we want to see, and so does the riveting detail. As I say, all nice around the front. So what we're going to do, because I've got it here, I suppose, we might as well do the entire thing as a primer right the way over everywhere. So all we're going to do, obviously we're not going to spray this on neat, so we just grab this one and our colour cup after putting it away. There we go. So we've got our 5mm colour cup. We can just screw that back on the top. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're just going to grab our thinners in first. Okay, so we're going to put 50-50 mix. So we'll just tip these for the moment. Okay, so 50% and then 50% thinners to 50% paint. In there, I've got a brush here, we'll just give these a good old mix around. Okay, so it's quite a thick mix because obviously this is the Mr. Hobby acrylic paints. They go on quite glossified. The nice thing about these paints is they're very, very hard wearing. Some acrylics you can literally, you can just rub them off with your finger and wear through them quite quickly, but these ones, I must admit, they tend to go on, they go on hard. Okay, so we're shooting around about the sort of 25 to 30 psi. Okay, we'll start with the underside. So we've got those photo etch parts we had on the bottom as well, and obviously for the wing, and we're just going to mist on a coat to start with. Okay, and just once we've got a bit on there, we can come in a bit more heavy. Let's say this is only a primer. I know this is the colour we're going to be coming back with shortly, or something very similar, but for the moment we're just going to use it. And obviously we've got those tail planes are sort of free moving. So what we're looking for now is anything that looks wrong, a really bad join, seam lines, glue marks, because if we can see it here, we're going to see it in a moment. Okay, so we're just looking to make sure everything is hunky-dory at this stage, checking all your seams. As I say, glue marks are always a tricky one, perhaps you don't see and then the paint goes on. So this is really where it all comes into its own. And mind you don't drip it everywhere like I'm just doing now. Okay, so we're just going to work right the way over the model. Okay, so there we go, that's that primer all on there now. So what all we've done, had a look around and we looked for any lumps and bumps, and to be honest I had a few little ones just down here under the cockpit area. So what I actually did, got a little bit of thinners, cellulose thinners, and give it a quick wipe to get rid of the PVA glue, because I had a little bit too much squishing out from underneath here. And obviously if you try and sand it, it rolls off. So if you use a couple of strokes of cellulose thinners, it will get rid of PVA glue and give you a nice finish. So we've taken care of that now, all happy. We've gone around and we've got no lumps and horrible bumps anywhere. We've popped in those panel lines before, they're looking great now and everything else. So we're really happy of how it's all looking. I'm handling it with a rubber glove, purely because we've used the actual hobby colour acrylics, and they tend to be like a gloss. And what happens is, and to be honest I did it up here, if you hold on to them too long, the temperature through your finger melts the surface of it, and before you know it you've got a fingerprint, and that's what happened up here. So hence wearing the glove for just holding it. But for the moment we can sort of quickly move on. So what we're going to do now is pre-shade. Now you've probably seen me do this 100 times before, so we'll just recap quickly. Basically, pre-shading, what happens is it adds a stain or a shadowing to any colour that goes over the top. And because here on the bottom we're going to have a nice light blue colour, certainly for around the wings and the back end of the engine area and things like that, it will show through very, very well. If you're doing it on the top, like we're having up here, this sort of close-knit, very tight camo pattern, in deeper colours, in darker colours, then obviously it's not going to show through as well. But certainly for the underside it would be really worthwhile, and obviously for the top we are going to see a little bit. It's one of those things, it's personal choice. Some people like it, some people don't. So if you want to go for a weathering thing, I always do it, even if I'm going to show it or not a little bit later on. But it gives me the option when I come to put the paint on to how it's going to look, which is something we'll talk about in a minute. Now I've still got some of that other colour in here, but what we're going to do is a 50-50 mix. We're not going to need tons of this, okay, of paint and thinners. Okay, so got a brush here just to give it a bit of a mix up. Okay, so we'll just come over here, we check our flow. Now I've said this lots and lots of times before, don't worry about it if it looks messy. If it looks messy, that's no problem at all, because what's going to happen is that it will give you a better looking model, a lot more rougher looking, as in if you did it perfectly and you had exactly the same lines absolutely everywhere all over your model, when you put the paint down it's going to look great, but it's going to look too uniform, it's going to look like a grid underneath. By having it so it fades in and out and you see a lot of it darker, and how this will happen is obviously the amount of paint you go down, and obviously slightly curvy lines will take your eye and it'll make it look a lot more natural. So there we go. Usual thing, we're shooting at about sort of 30 psi. Okay, 50-50 mix. So we're just going to come along and we're going to pop in some panel lines. So if I just do a few with you, then I'll carry on. So we're going to do big ones around the wing. just like this, okay, working down these flaps. And to be honest, we need to hold it a little bit more steady. If we bring you in a little bit, you can see. Okay, so we just steady with my hand, other hand. As I say, they're not neat, they're not straight, but I like them, okay? So this panel at the top, we're just going to run it around, and it's not even right the way on it. It doesn't have to be. So we just pick out these panels. These small little access ones, we're just going to paint them in and fill them in. So we're just putting these blurs over the top. Okay, some around these, the speed brakes, the sensors on the nose. Just like that. And what we're going to do, we're going to go around the entire aircraft just doing exactly the same thing. Big panel lines get big panels, lots of paint on there. Little thin ones get very little, so it's more like a shadowing effect. So I'm going to carry around everywhere. Okay, so that's all dried. So what we're going to do now is obviously the blue underside. Now this is where it gets a little bit, you know, strange with the old colour callouts. Okay, now obviously each manufacturer tends to use their own colours and things like that. But there is a slight discrepancy when you start looking at the colours that they're calling out for this particular one. And because it's going to be a shark, obviously we've got blues and greys and things like that. The colours seem to be all over the place. Now it's calling out for this blue here, which is H-45 for the underside. It's probably as close as actually the Gunzo colours can actually get to, the Mr. Hobby colours. So what I've done, I've got here a bottle of the Model Hobbies, what they call their USSR underside blue, which if you see it compared to here is a totally different animal. This is very blue. This is that greeny blue. And what that colour does is this type of colour, okay? This is this one here, so it's even more bluey than it looks on the bottle, certainly on the camera angle here. So in testing, obviously we did these in testing, works okay, but it's still a little bit bright. So what we need to do is just cut it back with a little bit of white. Now, I'm not worried about mixing colours so much, it tends to be a bit trial and error. But what we've got here, some Tamiya XF2 flat white, and we're going to mix it in the colour cup with this blue. Now these colours here tend to be a little bit what I call latexy, so you have to be careful about, like up here you've got a build up around the top. On the close up camera you can probably see it as well. You've got this build up, so it's not too nice if it gets down the business end of your airbrush. So I'm going to thin it with Tamiya thinners, X20A. So we're coming in with thinners in there like that. We're going to pour a little bit of the blue in. Okay, it takes us up to here. And then you should have opened the pot first. Let me just put that in the airbrush holder a second. Then we've got the blue, the white coming here. So let's get that one back again. So here we go. And what we're going to do is just add a few drops of white into this as well. And then around here somewhere we've got a brush. And we're just going to give this a good old mix up in the colour cup. Now the reason for mixing it with a little bit of white, obviously got a little bit too much paint going on here. What it does, it gives that effect of bleaching and of age, because obviously when new paint goes on, especially on aircraft, it's very strong colours, doesn't take long with a little bit of weathering, sun bleaching, things like that, and it makes it a lot lighter. And when you see the reference photos, all these blues tend to be a little bit either very grubby or a lot lighter. So what we're going to do, we'll just check our flow. As I said, I've got a little bit too much paint on the go. And as you see, you probably can't see just there. If I angle the camera down a sec, you'll be able to see this blue that we've got on the go down here. You see it's very strong, but that's because it's got the first colour in. As we go along, you might be able to see it lighten. See down here, you can see it gets to a lighter blue. This is the blue we don't. We don't want this strong one, we want this lighter one down here. So we're happy with how that is. So we just bring you up and out just a fraction. Then what we're going to do is the entire underside and slightly up the back. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start around the rear so I can show you where we're going to. So it's all the underside areas. Okay, so we're going to do these engines. Okay, and because we've got the free shading on, we're not going to totally obliterate. And you see we had a bit of a spit then, and that's because it's bits of blue paint coming in. Okay, then these tail planes will just stick up a moment. The tail planes are quite rough. Okay, then what we're going to do is obviously this underside area just along here. It's going to be blue. Okay, the undersides of the engines. So what we want to do is go slightly above where we want to go, this area down here, because obviously the camo goes right up and it's a hard edge camo, so we can just mask straight in. So I would say is just go along that entire area totally, just like this, and then we'll worry about it afterwards. But there we go, you see the pre-shading's coming through. Now this is the point where you have to carry on until you think you've got enough on there, so we just give it a little bit more. Knock it back a little bit, perhaps like that, and when you think, right, okay, I want it to be nice and grimy, and by the time it's got a wash and some other bits and pieces going on with it, we should be all about right. So I'm quite happy how that is, just like that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to carry on and do the underside of the wings just the same way. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to redo those pylons. Bit of a spit happening there. So it's the only trouble with this paint, it does tend to get a little bit spitty. Actually what we've got is a tiny run come down, as we can see here, and when it gets to the front end, the business end of the airbrush, it tends to be, that's when we're getting the spitting, and that's where the spittings come from. So there's a bit of a lesson there. Don't let your paint go near the front, otherwise you'll get spits. There we go, that clears us. So what we do, we can go along this wing, say the underside. Don't worry about it too much because we're going to be doing the front end of this, obviously is going to be the shark, but if you're not doing the shark version, then obviously you'll carry this right the way along. Okay, anywhere it's looking a little bit too strong on the pre-shading, but that gives you an idea of it there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to carry on and do the other wing here. Okay then, so we're all just about ready to go now. So pre-shading's on, it's all dried, and now we've got to look at the camo work and everything else. So we're just going to spend a couple of minutes talking through. Now, if you use the colour callouts that you'll see for doing this particular one, unfortunately when you look at the real aircraft, we've got a photo here, you can probably see it's nothing like the colours they're calling out here, because if you was to use them and they're saying about you know, obviously this grey colour down here and this blue colour on the top and things like that, when you actually look at the colours they're calling out, like this H83 colour is the blue, well that's dark grey, you know, so it's nothing like it. And when you see the picture of the real aircraft, it's even more blue. So I think we can safely get rid of them, forget about the colours they're calling out for the shark. We'll wing that and we'll come up with our own colours for it. Some of the colours I've been playing with to get this sort of bluey grey colour is a couple of the RAF Ocean colours and perhaps like a sky grey for down the bottom and things like that. But there's still little things I'm going to play with a little bit afterwards. And certainly for that grey down the bottom, we're thinking about perhaps doing it in 417 and things like that. But as I said, when you look at the way it actually goes on, obviously in real life the shark was painted on afterwards, and that's something we're going to do as well. And okay, we might have to have a little bit of a go at the masking at the top for some of the fins and some of the areas on it, but certainly from our point of view it's going to be a lot easier. When you look at this camo pattern, you can probably see it's a very tight grouping of pattern. It's not what we call a soft edge camo, which is something we could do by freehand. It's extremely close, and really for the point of view, unless I was going to take a long time and probably take a couple of hours doing each wing and do it freehand, it's probably going to be easier to mask it up. Now we've got a couple of options for masking it up. Obviously you could use tape, Tamiya tape, some 40mm is a good idea. You could then cut the patterns in and then stick it on, away you go. There again, extremely hard because it is so tight. If you're doing one of these birds perhaps in 1/32 scale, you can get away with it. In this scale on 172, it's going to have to be a mask job. One little thing I've been playing with is to actually using, you've probably seen me use this technique before with the basics of airbrushing, where you can lay this down, use it as a camo pattern, okay, and you spray around it, so when you remove it, it acts like a mask, and because it's got an edge on it, it's slightly soft and gives a nice sort of effect like that. What I'm planning on doing is this little effect where obviously it's just little scoops and things like that. So what we're going to do is just lay this up against the tail here. Okay, we just knead this into position. Okay, we'll take it along the tail, push it all down and stick it all on. Okay, happy how that is. And then we take some tools, so you don't need anything specialist for this. I'm going to use a pair of tweezers. Okay, and then all we're going to do, we'll look at the reference of the tail of how it goes, and we know just down here there's a very large depression and push up. Okay, and we can actually, by using a few little tools like this, we can hopefully scoop in and push up and make the pattern as we need to as we go along. So as you can probably see like this, if I just work my way along this one roughly, is by pulling downwards like that, okay, and then next to it pushing up and around it, we can actually make this type of feathered edge that we're looking at doing. Okay, now you don't want I've got it here, to be honest, there's one thing I would change, it's a little bit thick. Okay, so it's making it very hard to sort of manipulate this around and do all the bits. But what we want to do is carefully rolling it down in some areas and then pushing it up. Okay, and by just kneading it, and hopefully don't slip like that, because otherwise you're going to end up pulling it. But you can see we get this type of torn effect working along it just like that, and that will give us that edge that we're getting so well on this one as well. So that's the idea to it, is to do it. And I've done the tail on the other side, and to be honest, I've already practiced a little area and it worked an absolute treat. So what we're going to do, we're going to just do these like that, because obviously we need a hard edge with this blue. The rest of it is all going to be faded in on the sides, so we're not too worried about it. Okay, so the colours we're going to be using, which seem to be correct to be honest, for the top, obviously the really light colour, which is like this Israeli sort of desert colour, to be honest, that's H313, so we'll be using that for that. We're going to start with the lightest colour first, so that will be our first colour going on, and then afterwards we're going to do the green, which is H70, which is quite a nice sort of leaf green to it as well. And then obviously we're going to come along with a 330, which is, I'm just making sure we have got that correct, yeah, 330, which is the dark green colour, which is the REF colour. Again, so it seems to be they're the closest match to it. Then obviously if we do make any mistakes, don't panic, we can always come along with our other colour and do it. So what we're going to do is just load up the airbrush. Okay, now because we want to spray this almost dry, or what I call a dry effect, alright? When I say dry, what it means is the paint is extremely thick, because when it goes on, I want it to stick on, and then that's it. I don't want it to be wet and watery and start working its way underneath and bits and pieces like that. I want it to go on, I want it to stick. That's the end of it. So what we'll do, we're just going to grab a little bit of masking tape and just tape up this lower edge as well, because I don't want it to go over the back of this engine, and just to cover under there. Okay, and then for this little bit only, I'm just going to spray it on neat. So what we'll do, we're just going to pour a tiny bit into the colour cup, just for the moment, just to get us going, and then we can show you what we've got. Okay, check our flow coming through, and very, very lightly we're going to blow this on, okay? So we're not going to be wanging down a heavy coat, just misting it, dusting it on, right the way over, cutting to air, dry it down. Okay, coming back with some paint. And what we're trying to do is sort of keep it 90 degrees on, so all the paint flow goes in nicely. And I know it's very thick, and that's why we're just doing it in this one area. Now, as we know, we've got different coloured greens come down here, so we can't unmask this to show, but that's it. But that little area, I wanted it on there quite thick, so we're just cutting to air, dry it down, on like that. And then what we're going to do, we're going to take the old instructions just like this, okay, and what we're going to do is just follow some of the areas. So this light tan colour is obviously in the middle of this tail up here, alright, so all we're going to do is just literally the middle of the tail, and because we've got past the worst of that, we're just going to add a little bit more paint into the colour cup, okay, thinners, and we're just under a 50-50 mix, so we're probably 40% thinners to sort of 60% paint here. Okay, so we want it quite thick because I want it to grip on, stick on, and that's it. The other thing as well to remember, because we're using the hobby colour paints, they do take a lot longer to dry. So when you're masking over, don't do them straight away, okay? So that's that one. So we're just going to literally centre this area because then all the hard work will come afterwards. So roughly in. Just blow through to get some of the more thin paint coming through. Okay, and we're just going to spray up this area. You know, it goes up near the tails, somewhat down here. So we've just done that area, sort of almost a blob in the middle, okay? And then we then know it's, when you look at the actual instructions themselves, it comes up this spine area a little bit, okay? And we can work along the wings. We've got a little bit, it's just on the edge here. Okay, and then we've got another one in the centre pylon, so it's just down in here. Okay, and it comes quite a bit over. So this dry over here, we can just come back, touch that in, because it's a little bit strong. Okay, we've got some round the rear front area here. Getting wet, so we just cut into air, drying down. Okay, we've got a little bit over the middle area here. Okay, so we're just going to do that as well. Making sure we come down the sides to keep it somewhat even. And we know it comes a little bit over here. Just back over those areas again because the old pre-shading's just showing through a little bit strong. Okay, that's that done nicely, and then we're just looking over. Okay, now we've got it coming over the top, but obviously we've got some areas here where obviously we've got the actual shark thing, so don't worry about it too much. So we can just do the top of this intake area here, just like so. And we just connect these up, although they're not really connected up, but I don't want to take any chances. It's best now to have more paint on and go wider around than it is to have it where you don't have enough. Okay, so then we can just come along here. We've got one section like a blob moving up through the middle there. Then this one sort of rattles right the way over here, and then it's going to sort of work its way back down. As I say, don't worry about this being rough. As long as you go over, then we can tidy it up afterwards. Okay, then we've got another one out here. So it's going to come in here. Tiny bit on the edge. Now this leading edge here, we're just going to pull this down, coming in about 45 degrees. So it's got enough paintwork to cover, but not enough to worry about. Okay, we'll just go around over those areas again to make sure we're all in and we're happy. Just like that. Okay, then we can just turn around now, other side of the tail. Alright, we've got quite a large area. It's going to run from the sort of middle here and it's going to go up. So I'm sort of doing this cack-hand heading back to front a little bit, but it will get the idea.